Hi, everybody. This is SAAD. A few months ago, I received an incredible letter from a gentleman, and I'd like to read you that letter. I obtained permission from him to read it. Of course, I won't identify him, and I will remove some of the identifiers, but it'll give you a sense of uh, why I fight the way that I do for individual dignity of all people to be free of shackles of any type. So here we go. Dear Dr. Saad, apologies upfront for this unsolicited approach. I'm an avid listener of the Joe Rogan podcast, and I particularly enjoyed hearing you as a guest speaker in 2018. And I went and dug up all of your previous guest spots since 2015. I still get a chuckle at the quote Ron Jeremy of evolutionary psychology nickname your adversaries have given you. I like what you're about. It's like a breeze of fresh air when I hear you speak the truth about Islam and the Middle Eastern culture. I too fit into that narrative of, quote, I consider myself liberal, but I don't ascribe to the Bernie Sanders social justice warriors and Islam sympathizers narrative, close quote, which I assume you and Joe entertain. If you're short on time, just jump to the paragraph before last as it has the butter. I grew up in a conservative household in Saudi Arabia. My upbringing was strict Wahhabi, as my mother directly hails from that lineage. I was brainwashed by a lethal combination of a toxic religion and rigid culture that caused me to think in a flawed, delusional way about almost everything. For example, I never saw or have spoken to a woman until the age of 18. For a while, I thought I was homosexual. I also remember going to Friday prayers, hearing the Imam cursing almost every religion out, and mosque goers cheering in agreement. I remember vividly my father storming into my room, that was his style, to bust me listening to music and beating me up for it, usually a cable. Our family was middle class by Saudi standards. My parents made sure I had everything I needed financially. I think they meant good in their own twisted way. By 18, I was granted an academic scholarship to study in I won't mention the name of the country, that was life changing. I did not go back to Saudi once in 4 years. I learned that I was sheltered by an overly protected, overly religious family. I consider my time in the country in question as liberating as I challenged myself to explore everything that was forbidden in my childhood. Long story short, I became a closet atheist after many restless thinking nights and debates. I eventually went back to Saudi. I worked there. I faced a reverse culture shock but rode it through. I focused on work and being positive. My family did not accept the new me. They thought I was mentally ill. My mother was buying Islamic self-help therapy books and slipped them under my room's door. Eventually, I was lucky to receive a second academic scholarship to another Western country, I won't mention the name, to study for my master's degree. My mother hid my passport so that I won't leave. I eventually left. My time in that second Western country was liberation on steroids. I became independent of my parents and thus religion. I spent another 5 years there and became more vocal about atheism. I lived with a Hindu roommate in the biggest Jewish suburb in that country in question. I was finally free from the shackles of Islam and the mold I was put in. I explored a lot. I learned a lot. I expressed to my family over the phone my religious views, and I was shunned. My mother would only send me religious texts over WhatsApp. I eventually blocked her. I worked my ass off in that country. I worked as a busboy at a dive bar, and I worked at a retail store selling clothes. Eventually, I started working as a management consultant at a top-tier consulting firm. My time in that particular country was great, but I didn't feel like I was going up in my career. I was approached by a Saudi-based company. They offered me 3 times what I make, and I decided to go back again to the Saudi. I'm now back in Saudi in stealth mode. No one from my family knows I'm back. I rented an apartment and focused on work. Life is better as I became more independent. I have my own oasis and I travel whenever I can. I still feel in the closet, but that doesn't bother me. The reason for my email is that I have somewhat unfinished business, unanswered questions about myself, family, life, relationships with partners, and others in my life. I feel like I'm lost between cultures. The West don't really accept me as a Westerner. The East don't accept me without Islam. I don't particularly take pride in being Arab. I take pride in being an independent human who represents nobody but himself. I have the ability to somewhat think things through and rationally, but I recently realized that I need a professional's opinion on things. The environment around me is a bit of the same, so it's hard to find an open-minded person to speak to. For example, I cannot speak to a Saudi Muslim therapist because they will most likely rat me out. I also don't think a Western therapist would understand how Muslim families will do everything to pull you back into Islam. That includes manipulation. I don't think anyone understands the level of fucked up upbringing a Saudi conservative has experienced. I'm not trying to sound special, but I truly believe it takes a special kind of person to decode the trauma I went through. Do you happen to know a therapist whom I can speak to? Apologies for the wall of text. I have much to say, but I try to be as brief as possible. Thank you for being brave and for exposing the toxicity of Islam / the Arab world. Best. And he signs his name. I write back to him, dear so-and-so, thank you for trusting me with your story. I fight for people like you, born into the shackles of religious zealotry. I'm proud of you for having had the fortitude to free yourself of these ideological chains. I know many therapists, but none come to mind that specifically deal with your issue. I'll ask a friend, and if I have any leads, I'll get back to you. Do you mind if I were to read your letter on my show? It is very powerful and moving. Needless to say, I would not mention your name, and I would remove key details from the email. Hence, no one could ever find out your identity. And then he writes back, thank you for your reply, Dr. Saad. People don't understand how toxic and mafia-like this religion is. Abandoning that path is a lonely journey, but being free makes it worth it. Regarding the therapist, I'm at a period of my life that I did not prepare for. What will I say to my soon-to-be in-laws? What will I say to my kids? Will they grow 100% westernized with no connection to the Middle East? These types of questions are so contextual, and speaking about it is the best solution in my opinion. The problem is not finding someone who understands, as I mentioned previously. Anyhow, yes, Dr. Saad, you can share a sanitized version of my letter. Apologies for the late response. I hope all is well over there. Be well and in touch, sir. This is why I do what I do. I don't criticize individual people. I don't hold hatred towards individual people. What I do is to try to offer whatever insights that I can so that all people, transgender and not, gay or not, Muslim or not, religious or not, scientists or not, purple or not, so that all people can live according to the tenets of free societies in the 21st century, informed by science, by logic, by reason, by evidence-based thinking. I receive innumerable letters such as the one that this gentleman sent me from all sorts of Islamic countries. So again, the reason that I do what I do is because I wish for all people to be maximally fulfilled in their lives. And to the extent that they wish to be religious and be hardcore Muslims, and if that makes them happy while not infringing on the rights of others, fine. But if they are bullied into being Muslim or Orthodox Jew or social justice activists or whatever the ideology that is enforced upon someone, then it is incumbent on all of us to contribute to free such people, because in many cases they live in societies where they are unable to speak out. And therefore, it becomes incumbent on someone like me who has grown up in those societies, who has seen what can happen when you have religious tribalism rule every aspect of your life, for us to speak out so that we can give the courage to either remain within their religion or to decide, if they have the courage to do so, to leave it. So there you have it, folks. I thought that it would be worthwhile for me to share with you this incredibly moving exchange that I had. And every time that I receive a letter from someone who shares with me these types of feelings, it only compels me to move forward. To haters out there who levy all sorts of hate to me and others like me who are only trying to do good things, shame on you. If you are truly a liberal person, you will be doing nothing but supporting us. Take care, everybody.